Well, welcome. My name is Lian Low. I'm from Peril Magazine, and I would like to introduce my distinguished guests here. Suchen Christine Lim from Singapore and Jhoanna Lynn B, Cruz from the Philippines. Well, thank you. Well, my first question is about your participation in the RICE residency program. And earlier in the year, you were both in Hoi An and Hanoi in Vietnam.
That's right.
And you both just returned from an incredible residency in Hillsville and a reading as well in Castlemaine. I'd like to hear about your experiences within the residency.
Do you want to go first?
You go first.
All right. Well, I think let's start with Hoi An. All right. When I went there, the wonderful thing I discovered is that here is a group of strangers, and we all met. We had never heard each other's read. We had never read each other's work, and we are supposed to read something from our work in progress, and that was scary. But when we did, it was a revelation of tremendous talents and discovery of writers from different parts of Asia. I've never met, especially poets from Myanmar, or Vietnam.
Yes.
And so it was really wonderful.
Yes.
And then I discovered her.
It's amazing.
Of course, when I went to Hoi An, I was already a fan of Suchen Christine Lim's work because, we teach her work in the Philippines as part of Southeast Asian literature.
Amazing.
So I was very eager to come to the RICE Fellowship to meet Suchen. So, and I think that's one of the brilliant features of this fellowship because they've brought together writers at different stages of their writing careers, and it's just fascinating to watch the interaction happen. Yes. The young emergent writers from Australia and senior writers like Suchen and Kate Kennedy. So it's really fascinating for me, and to go through the writing retreat together and work on stuff that are in progress. I think it's a gift to each other, and to read it to each other. It made me feel quite vulnerable and also liberated. I thought it was really a gift to each other.
Yes, it is a gift. Listening to each other's work intensely, I think, for 3 hours, each day, each afternoon. It's really a gift because, and as you say, you are vulnerable. I was very vulnerable because I've never read like this to young writers. The work that's unpublished, that's never been seen by any other person.
That's right.
And here you are offering it to a group of strangers, and then they're giving you feedback and reaction, right? And that was so enriching.
Yes.
Especially to hear all of you, responding to something I say, oh, this is so chaotic, I don't know what I'm doing, and this is so raw. And then they said, it's okay, carry on, work through the chaos.
And have there been, so it sounds like there's this incredible cross-influence and
That's right.
Supportive environment to be vulnerable in the space. And I actually remember also reading on the RICE blog about what you wrote, Jhoanna, in terms of it being a gift, and also, and your thoughts and your reflections, Suchen, about how that in some ways, if these writers, you might pass their books and you don't know who they are, but now in this opportunity, as you said, that you're actually meeting Suchen in person.
Yeah. So and now we're really close because it's a shared vulnerability and shared opportunity, and it's really wonderful. That's wonderful.
And how has that influenced both your work? Because you're primarily a fiction writer, Suchen, And Jhoanna, you're a performance poet, you're a memoirist.
Well, yeah.
Model,
And
actor.
Yeah. Actually, when I came to the RICE program, I was really focused on the memoir that I've been struggling with. So I had planned to finish the book last year, but I was stuck.
Yeah.
So I did have a writing problem with it, and it was the anchor essay, the title essay, and that's what I brought into the program, coming into Hoi An residency, and I wrote it there. I wrote like I've never written before, and it went through the workshop. And so yes, the input from Singapore, Vietnam, Australia, it was fantastic. And so I revised, and it came out in the Griffith Review.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
That's
the memoir that's now published in Griffith Review, the New Asia Now.
Yes.
Volume 2, the ebook, where you are also in, has that essay. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. It's
And mine was even more incredible. The first night in Hoi An, I was in this bedroom and I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. Remember, I woke up and I told you all, these lines came to me, you know. I won't tell you all just yet because it's going to enter into my new novel. And I said, that's my grandmother's pillow book, right? It was, yes, these lines just came to me in a dream and it's going to be part of the novel.
That's wonderful.
Yes, and it's because we were just in a wonderful writing environment and atmosphere. There's something magical. But as I said in my Facebook, strangers on different boats met in this port of call for a while. And we sat, we drank, we had wine under the stars, you know, and things happened. I don't know how it happened, but I think it must be the Hoi An wine.
creative work happened.
Yes.
But what I also like about it as a distinct feature of the RICE program is it coming back together to Melbourne.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and to being able to catch up and sustain the connection, the friendship, the network.
Yes.
And to see how
we
the work
progress.
has progressed.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it's really
incredible.
special.
It is special because it is also about the process as well as maintaining a relationship, and that in that sense you can see it's like a long TV series.
It's reality TV.
Be involved, and it's beautiful because it means that there is an opportunity to build long-term relationships and deepen engagement. That in some ways residencies, other types of residencies, you would.
No, that's right.
That's
As
right.
I was saying,
you're alone, you're alienated.
And then people come to you, aspiring writers come to you for advice and so on. Then after that you are alone, you know, writing. But here you are with peers, you know, from emerging writers to very senior writers, and then you get reactions and responses, you know, given in a spirit of artistic friendship, you know.
That's right. Right.
That is the gift, and that's what's unique. And we are all there, being very vulnerable, offering unpublished work, you know,
absolutely,
to strangers.
Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, that's really what makes me want to see this RICE program continue. And the other unique point is that we bring together writers from different parts of Southeast Asia to dialogue, you know, and then with Australian writers, because I come from a country that's been colonized under the British, right?
I come from a country colonized by the Spanish and the
Americans, you know.
So my references are so very American.
That's right, yeah. And mine up north, not down south.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Vietnam was colonized by France, so
Yes.
it's so diverse actually.
Yes. And how
When
did-
I met them, when we were brought together, I saw how different I was and yet how same.
Mm-hmm.
We have this expression in Asia, same.
Yes, same
How
thing.
we are all
Same,
the
but
same
different.
but different.
Sama-sama.
Yeah,
It's in
yeah,
Malaysia,
same,
they say it's
different.
sama-sama.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But was
So-
that with this gathering then, when you're talking about this history of colonization, that it was being together, then you were able to then talk about the decolonization in your work, or was that something then that was a I guess, you know, like kind of the awareness, and how then that was, does that build into the work as well?
Well, I think the post-colonial mindset is always there. I mean, it's the back of your head. But one of the distinct features is the choice of language, I think, because we're writing in English. And or from English, as we like to say in the Philippines. We don't write in it, we write from it, because we've colonized the language. The way I think Singapore also has that.
Yes.
But I thought it was interesting that, for instance, Chan, our Vietnamese poet, tells us that she's writing the poems at the same time in English and in Vietnamese. And I thought that was interesting because like for me, the colonial experience, I can't write in Filipino, which is sad. I'm sorry about it. Because when I write it, it comes out in English.
Interesting. That's very.
I don't think I think in English. I mean, that would be
that
that would be
would
foolish
be-
to say. But my writing comes out in English.
That's really interesting.
And
It's like for my fiction,
Yes.
especially like River Song,
Yes.
with all these dialect voices, you
Yeah.
know, Hokkien and so on. So I think, depending on the character, I think in Cantonese or in Hokkien, and then I try to use the English as clay, as a potter using clay to
Yes.
sculpt it according to what I want. But we don't think of it as this is a response to post-colonial. I'm not an academic,
Yes.
okay? I just write,
Yes.
you know, like the river, the water just flows, you know, and it comes out.
Yeah.
And when other people read it, they say, oh, this
is post-colonial,
But that's
yeah.
that's my environment. you
that's
know?
true.
Yes.
It is the role of the academic or the critic to
That's
say,
right.
oh, look, this is post-colonial, or this is feminist, or this is what it
I'm
really
the
is.
fish swimming in the sea, and they analyze the seawater. How about that?
That's right. Okay. And then eat the fish.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, and so I want to then go into your work, both your works then, and I guess being writers also, and the stages of your career. So, Jhoanna, you made reference to your memoir that was published in the Griffith Review, Abinako, and in it you wrote, Women Loving, which you have there,
Yes.
is the first single-author anthology of lesbian-themed stories in the Philippines.
Right. Yes.
It
It
should-
still is so far.
That's amazing.
Oh.
Yes.
And it came out in 2010. It's
Wow.
been 5 years, and I haven't seen more.
collection.
Although I do know a friend who published a book of poems. Who is a lesbian.
Yes.
But I haven't read it.
Yes. Because I guess, I mean, in your memoir you said, you wrote that you should have blasted me to literary stardom
Yeah.
and Abinako, but it seemed the community was more interested in gossip. And so I guess for me, I would like to hear about your struggle for recognition, to be acknowledged for the merits of your work and what you go through with that.
Yeah, I guess on the one hand, when I started writing lesbian-themed stories, I wanted to occupy the niche. I wanted to be the only one doing it. I wanted to, change the world, empower the lesbian community. There was that kind of artifice about it, but when it finally came out, it had a very quiet reception. It didn't there were no scandals or controversies around it. It was quiet. But I later learned that it was important for the book to come out to empower other lesbian writers to discover that yes, there is such a tradition, if you might call it that, or that there's someone doing it, and it helps to empower other writers. And I think I'm very proud to have played that role,
Yes,
even though I'm not this like superstar.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'm on the way. I already look like one. So.
people are just there, just have to catch up.
Yeah.
There's always hope.
Yeah. They will come to it.
That's right, exactly. And it's so now, can we buy this book? Where
Oh
can we buy
yeah.
it?
Actually, like I said, it's quietly successful. It's out of print, out of the first printing, which is a very modest. In the Philippines, we have modest print run, so 1,000 copies, which is a lot by our standards. Out of print, but I have an ebook publisher, and it will be available in all the sellers, online sellers,
Awesome.
under the title "Women on Fire."
Oh,
Right. So
Very nice.
It's same but different.
That's brilliant.
So I hope that that ebook version will get me a wider audience,
Yes.
maybe catapult me to some kind of stardom. But despite that, we just keep writing,
Yes.
keep plodding on,
Absolutely.
and doing what we can to. Maybe at the back of my head for the cause, for sexual diversity, for the freedom to love who we love, but also just to write.
Yes, absolutely.
beautiful.
Yes, because I guess, and that segues to my question to you then, Suchen, and for yourself, you're I guess a living legend.
No, not yet. I'm not that old.
No. You are the winner of the inaugural Singapore Literature Prize in 1992.
Right.
And you've won so many accolades, including
The Southeast Asia Writer Award, yes.
The Sea Right.
Sea Right.
Which is an award for
extraordinary.
those who are not in Thailand. This is a lifetime achievement award.
Oh my
The
goodness.
Southeast Asia
For the whole
Writers-
body of work. For the whole
For the
body
whole
of
body.
work. Yeah.
So yes,
In
legend.
Southeast Asia.
Yes, and that's extraordinary.
Mm.
Truly it is an honor. And I think,
But I'm also very honored to be here. I'm reading for the first time in the
Yes.
Melbourne Writers Festival.
Yeah. I mean, it's
My first
incredible.
time in Melbourne.
yes, and I'm so excited that we can hear you read a bit later on as well. And I mean, for me, I think from what I know, that you start off as a teacher, and then and in your work you have this, some of the themes of, like early on in your work, about trying to find an artistic voice in from being like this dullness of being a teacher, not dullness, but the monotony, and breaking out of the monotony, and finding the artistic, I guess, rebellion of freedom. And what is the secret of your success, and how have you just maintained your writing and doing that?
I am very good at pretending to be attentive at principals' long meetings, the way they hold, and directors of education, long lectures. So I sit there looking very intelligent. Then my mind keeps on wondering about, I carry, the voice inside my head, And I pretend to take notes of the meeting, but I'm taking down my novel. I always tell this to teachers, don't worry, And I was in a very good Catholic junior college, so the head of department is a wonderful Irish sister, and I told her I can teach the whole morning without stop, but if she can give me a few afternoons free, But most teachers like to stop in between, have coffee, gossip, and all that. I don't do that. So I just teach all right through. Then in the afternoon, I hide in the library and I type. And at that time, I was using a mechanical typewriter. See, I'm that old. Okay. Yes. But actually, I am an accidental writer. I didn't mean to be a writer. I wanted to sell chicken porridge. You know rice porridge when I was a kid? Kai chok.
But there is there's this tradition in Malaysia that is, like I guess those hawker stalls. They only sell chicken porridge,
That's
but
right.
that's the best chicken porridge.
That's right. It's the best. It's the best in Singapore, and I wanted to sell that chicken porridge. But I ended up teaching literature in English. And one day I was invigilating this long 3-hour exam, and then I started doodling, and the doodles turned into words, and the words turned into sentences, and then a paragraph, and I looked up, I said, oh my gosh, I forgot to invigilate, so I walked up and down. And then from those paragraphs, I started writing, and that's how it...
Really?
Yes, really. True. And I said I took walks in the cemetery. Remember, because there was lots of traffic. In Singapore, it's densely packed. Yes. And I thought, the cemetery is the quietest place. So I walk with the dead. So in Fistful of Colour, there's a scene about that heroine and her Scottish lover walking down the cemetery, the Chinese cemetery. And right now that cemetery is about to be demolished. The dead will be removed for a highway.
Oh no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
So, if people want to really know the recent past architecture of Singapore, they'll have to read my novels. Yes. They have discovered that Fistful has a lot of scenes of Stamford Road, of various parts, or like the river songs, the Singapore River I talked about, that community, gone.
Already gone.
Already gone. But it's the recent past. It's not just, we've just celebrated 50 years of independence. But in this 50 years, we have gone from third world, rat-infested place to all these high rises.
I mean, that's...
And we are now considered first world. You know that?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
There's toilet paper in the toilets.
Sorry?
No, the first world for me is like toilet paper in the public toilets. Sorry. It's a Philippine joke. There's never any toilet paper in Philippines.
Oh yes, I remember. Not even in the university.
Not even in the university.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, no,
and you're never sure if there's water in the tap.
Yes.
So.
I was just also curious because of...
But wait, I wanted to end this and say that
Yep.
in these 50 years, there is the ordinary person had to make a lot of sacrifices, especially those who do not speak English. Let's put it this way. So that's why I said my stories and my novels celebrate the unsung, the uncelebrated, and the unspoken.
And I mean that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful to hear as well. And I can, and I think in the passage that you read, that's something that we can hear from that too. I'm a bit curious about one of your works that we talked about early, just before, and the lies that build a marriage, where you also touch on gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender themes. And I guess for me, I'm curious about why you chose to write that. Or
I think it's fated. Nobody will believe it, but I wrote it at the back of the book called Journal of Story. See, when I went back, I returned from Scotland from my Scottish residency, the retired bishop of the Methodist Church suddenly approached me and said, Suchen, write us a story for Christmas. And he is the only church man who supports this free community church, which is the only church in Singapore that openly welcomes gay, lesbian, and others. So I knew that. So I asked him, so how long? So he said, 20 minutes. People will fall asleep. Don't go beyond that, And I asked him, do you want me to to see it. She said, no, I don't want to see it. Surprise me. Oh, and then I sat down and I wrote this story called The Morning After. It just came out. And I think it's the first story in Singapore written from the mother's point of view about a gay son coming out to her and what happened in the family. Yes.
That's brilliant.
And when I read it on that Christmas day, in place of a sermon, I think the first time any writer took the place of a pastor or a priest, and I read it at the old Parliament House, the Arts House now, 400 people, and then after my reading, silence. I was so scared. Then they stood up and gave me a standing ovation. And then later on I heard many of the men went to the washroom to cry because Christmas is the loneliest time for many of them. But unknown to me, the lesbians in the congregation then asked me to write that second story that I told you about, my two mothers.
The two mothers.
Yes. They said, now you have to write us a story for International Women's Day. So I went to the church group and then I wrote this about the two domestic servants who were lesbians and who brought up this daughter, then who went on to university.
That's incredible.
Especially not in the Philippines, imagine. And I did it again in East Malaysia, in Kota Kinabalu.
And you were also asked to do that. I mean, you were invited to.
I read Usha, my third child.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yes,
And that's extraordinary.
It was extra. I don't know how to say. That's why I say it's fate. I didn't look for it.
Yes.
And that's how that collection came about.
It's divine intervention.
Yes. That tips here for you, Jhoanna. When you're
I will go look for a bishop.
And for me as well, actually.
When you come, I'll take you to the church. It's really incredible.
Wow. Well, I guess I am conscious of time, and I would love to hear both of you reading your work as well. So what I would like to do now is if you can read as you have decided on the passages, and I guess an introduction to the work, as well as a bit of why you've chosen to read this work as well.
I can go first. I'm reading an excerpt from a story called Comadrona, which is we call that midwife. That's the midwife. Okay, so and it's about a young woman who is looking for her father. So she's never met her father, and she's looking for her father, who she thinks might be from Ilocos Sur. So she's gone on a road trip. So basically, it's a road trip story, a short one, and she's met this older woman who owns a pottery store, and they came together and they had sex. Sorry. So I'm just reading it. But it's actually it's a lyrical one-night stand story. That's what it is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we need some of that sometimes.
That's right.
So this is, I'll read the portion after they make up. I held her close to me, prepared to be pushed away. I wanted to ask her so many questions, but did not dare. She wept quietly and said, Tell me what you want to hear. I did not reply, terrified by what I knew to be the inevitable conclusion to nights such as this. She took a bead necklace from the baul and gave it to me. It is at least 100 years old. I want you to have it, she said. All my life I had been taught to want only what was given to me. Yet I desired more, something that was truly mine because I wanted it, Lumen explained. But you have so much to be thankful for. I do now, I think, she whispered, holding me closer. I left for Manila in the morning before her husband woke. She sent me away with a long string of homemade vegan longanisa that reminded me of a rosary project I once tried to make in high school, the one which constantly came undone because I could never twist wire number 28 properly between decades. How clumsy I had always been with small things. I gave her my phone number and address because I did not have anything else I thought she might need. She took my hand and kissed it gently 4 or 5 times. Thank you, Eva, she said. In her eyes I saw a faint smoldering that I hoped she would feed with the same devotion she gave to her cooking and her jars. I did not find my father, but it didn't seem to matter anymore. All I have now is the glass bead necklace from the camphor chest of Lumen's great-grandfather. She told me that it was handcrafted by a Tingyan woman from Abra who had come to their town bartering her family beads for rice. Inang, who saw the mud crusting on the woman's bare feet and the famine in her eyes, stole a ganta of rice from the family granary and refused the beads, knowing how valuable they were. But the woman did not want her charity. She left the necklace on the ground and walked away without looking back, the rice wrapped safely in the cloth sling her people used to carry their babies. It is translucent blue with a memory of sea or sky. It has no clasp to hint of where the string begins or ends. I keep it to invoke what is interminable. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you.
And Suchen, can you please introduce the work that you're reading and why you're what it's about and why you're choosing to share this as well?
Well, I wrote the River Song based on, well, let me begin, when I was a kid, I used to walk along the Singapore River and there were all these bumboats being built and bumboats men, and then the hawkers. Then one day I knew that they were clearing the river. And later on, the river became, in my eyes, a canal. Then by chance, I went to the archives and I dug up the archives of the bumboat men, and they were all in Teochew dialect, so I could only understand maybe 70%, but I listened to them. But as I listened to them, they were being interviewed by civil servant interviewers with an interpreter, translator. So they were asked, how did they feel, now that they have lost their livelihood or they had to change. And I was thinking, these are illiterate men, and the interviewer is a government servant. How does that power relations? So if you ask me, and I am a poor boatman, I wouldn't dare to spill my anger. So in Hokkien they all said, bo bien, bo bien, a kind of resignation. And as I listened to I found myself in tears. I mean, when I think about it, I am still moved, by those voices of the old men. So the next morning, Aku marched downstairs, armed with a bamboo pole. The morning sky was streaked red and orange, and the rooftops of Pagoda Street were aflame. Whiffs of burnt toast and sweet coconut and egg jam rose from the stove in Old Kim's coffee shop. Truck drivers and trishaw riders wolfing down their pork buns and char siu bao were shocked to see her up so early. Ignoring their calls, she hoisted the bamboo pole onto her shoulders. This was the pole she used for hanging up her bras and panties to dry, the very thing to bang on the bully's door. "Hey, Jacqueline, where are you going?" Old Kim called out to her. Aku stormed past him without answering. If she were to speak, she would explode. At the junction of Southbridge Road, she held up her pole to stop the traffic and crossed the road amidst a blare of angry horns. Her long hair twirled into a tight knot at the nape of her neck. She marched up Ang Siang Hill. Men on their way to work gawped. They had seen her at places they would never bring their wives to. 3 young hoots whistled at her as she strode past. These sons of South had nothing better to do, she thought. 2 housewives waddled past. A roadside bloom, one of them with a neck wreathed in gold chains, sniffed. The 2 snooty cows looked her up and down. She returned their bovine gaze till they looked away. She knew how respectable women regarded her, a siren strumming her peepa to entice their menfolk. She stopped in front of a terrace of 2-story townhouses. The house in the middle was painted a pale green with dark green shutters and pretty squares of pink and green floral tiles. She checked the house number. Yes, this was it. Her bamboo pole hit the front door. A woman's head popped out of the window on the upper floor. "What do you want?" "I want to talk to your mister." The woman's head disappeared. Minutes later, it popped out again. "My husband says he doesn't know you." "Tell him I want to talk to him. He doesn't talk to women like you." "What's wrong with women like me? Aren't you a woman yourself?" The window slammed shut. She raised the pole and hit its shutters again and again till the window opened and the woman's head reappeared. "My husband says he does not talk to women like you. Tell him to fall on his knees, kowtow to Lord Buddha, that a woman like me wants to talk to a coward like him." A crowd gathered round. She turned to them. "Aunties, uncles, you be the judge. This man works in an office. He went to an English school. He speaks English. He passed exams. And yet," she held up her forefinger, "and yet he daren't come out to face me. Do you know why? Tell us why." "Ah, I will, uncle. That I will. This man has a small heart. A small man with a small heart, for only a small-hearted man will spit on a small child. Hey, if you blacken my husband's name, he will sue you. Go ahead. Sue me, tell him. Let him tell the judge why he spat on a child and called her aunt a whore. Do you know why? You are his wife, let me tell you. Your husband, he spat on a little girl. Not because the little girl did him wrong. No, because of me. I didn't want to drink with him in the tea house, so he beat the dog to spite its owner. You go and tell that husband of yours. The dog's owner is here. He has nothing to do with the likes of you. You're mad. Aunties, uncles, Here I stand, am I mad? I'm waiting for her husband to be a man. Let him come out and spit on me, the adult, not the child. The child has done nothing wrong. Her only crime was to be born the daughter of a pipa songstress. We are not whores. We sing for men, it's true. We entertain men, it's true. We keep them company at night, that's also true. It's not high-class work. No, not office work, but work is work. Do we steal from you? Do we rob? Do we beg? Have we no pride, no skill? Which of you can play the pipa like us? We pipa girls, we sell our music and our songs. Night after night, we sing for pigs like her husband. We mop his brow. We laugh at his jokes. We listen to him complain about his wife when he should be at home with them, with devoted wives like you aunties. The women nodded, and the men, looking foolish, smiled. I ask you, which man will spit on a child? Not a man, I tell you, but a flea in a dog's backside. Look, there he goes. Look, insect. She stamped her foot on the imaginary bug. She raised her bamboo pole and brought it down hard on the invisible insect. Damn flea! The people laughed. Crush the insect, they shouted. Her bamboo pole hit the earth again and again. The crowd cheered her on. Oh, she's audacious, this hussy. They applauded her. Bravo, bravo. Thank you, thank you. A low theatrical bow. Thank you, aunties and uncles. She hoisted the bamboo pole onto her shoulders once again and marched back to Pagoda Street with the crowd following her. The housewives fanned out to the market and shops, eager to tell their friends and neighbors what they had witnessed. All morning, stories of the pipa songstress, her bamboo pole, and the flea in a dog's backside flew like crows all over the marketplace. That night, men flocked to the tea house to hear her play, and the pipa queen of Chinatown was born.
Thank you very much, Jhoanna Lynn B. Cruz and Suchen Christine Lim. It's been such an honor having this conversation and to hear your work being read as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.